just realized I never filmed an intro for this video, so this is going to be the story time about how I almost died. Okay, so first things first, I'm a diabetic. I've been diabetic since I was 12 years old. I'm now 24 years old, but when this happened, I was 23 years old. So basically, I had been sick for probably two and a half weeks at this point. I had a cold, I had a sore throat, I had the nose, I had everything that comes with a typical cold. So I was just like, all right, whatever. And I didn't think anything of it. I've been sick a million times. I always get sick because my immune system is so weak. And so I took off work one day and I had slept the whole day. And actually, my boss was kind of mad at me because he had nobody else to cover that day. I was going to be like the only one working. I was supposed to open the store, be there until whatever time until he got there. And I felt really bad because my boss was my cousin, was my boss, still is my cousin. And I felt really bad because I didn't want to let him down like that. But I knew something was wrong. I knew that I wasn't right. So I just slept from like whatever time in the morning until probably like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And the night before, I had gone to a party with my friend and my boyfriend, and my boyfriend and I got in this huge fight, and my friend was drunk, and it was just a bad night overall. I wasn't feeling very good to begin with. I stayed out way too late, which is kind of what pushed me to take off, because if I had gotten rest, I probably wouldn't have taken off. But that one decision kind of saved my life. By sleeping so much, my body was trying to heal. And when you sleep, obviously you're not eating. So my sugar had been pretty low for most of the day. But when I woke up, my sugar was like 250. And that's not normal if you haven't eaten anything and you're not doing anything all day. So I just gave some insulin. Didn't think anything of it. I barely ate. I wasn't hungry. I felt nauseous. And I wasn't hungover or anything because I don't drink. So I knew it wasn't that. But I felt off. I felt tired. I felt weak. I felt weird. And so I went to sleep that night, and I woke up about 2 in the morning, and I felt so nauseous. I felt like I was gonna throw up. So I got up and I went in the bathroom and I just sat by the toilet waiting to throw up. Nothing came out. I tested my sugar and it was like 490, and I was like, oh shit, better give some insulin. So I gave a bunch of insulin, and I went back to sleep, tried to lay there, couldn't fall asleep. I'm laying next to my boyfriend in bed and I'm just sweating. I'm just feeling terrible. And so I got up again. It was about 3:30 at this point, and I checked my sugar again, and my meter just read high, which means that it's over 500. So I started freaking out. I decided to test my ketones, and you test your ketones by peeing on a stick, and the ketones basically mean how much sugar has spilled over into your urine, which is very, very dangerous and very bad. And when you're sick, they're a little high. They're usually like mild to moderate. Mine were at the highest level. For people who out there who are diabetic and know about this, they were in the dark purple range. So I started freaking out. I've never felt that before. I've never seen that before. So I changed my insulin pod because I thought, okay, maybe something's malfunctioning. Let me change it. So I took it off, changed it, tried to go back to sleep, figured, okay, let me just relax, stop panicking, your sugar will go down, your ketones will go down, everything will be okay. I woke up again after just laying there. I think I fell asleep for like 10-15 minutes. The rest was just laying there. And I woke up at about 5, and I tested my ketones again, still high. My sugar's still red high, and this is 2 hours later. It should have went down. So I woke up my mom. I knocked on her door, and I was like, "Hey, Mom, I don't feel good. My ketones are high." And I'm saying this very calmly now, but I was actually crying and panicking and having an anxiety attack and freaking out. And as I'm saying this, I'm sitting on the bed with her, and she's rubbing my back, and all of a sudden I just projectile vomited everywhere, all over the bed, all over her, the floor, the walls. It was everywhere. I've never thrown up so much in my life. I hope I never throw up that much again. It was ridiculous. And it was all TMI, but there was no food in me because I hadn't eaten for like a day and a half. So it was just liquids and bile, and it was horrible because when you have to throw up, when your stomach is doing that and there's nothing in you and you're just gagging, like it's the worst feeling. So immediately my mom gets on the phone, she calls the doctor's office. They tell her that I need to go to the emergency room, and they're just going to check me out, make sure everything's okay, not to panic, just get there as soon as you can. Don't eat anything. If you have to eat something without carbs, like some meat or eggs or cheese or something like that, and drink some water. So I felt horrible. I was nauseous, so I didn't eat anything. Little did I know, I probably would have ate something if I would have known what was to come. But I get to the ER. I'm immediately checked in because it's like 6:30 in the morning. Nobody's there. They do all my vitals. They check everything. They check my sugar, and it had gone down like a little bit. It was like 450. So I get admitted to a room, and at this point, my dad was just getting there because we called him. My boyfriend obviously was sleeping over, so he was there, and my mom was there. They wouldn't allow more than 2 people in the ER room at once, so my mom and boyfriend were there. And then when my dad got there, my mom left, and my boyfriend and my dad were there. So I didn't know what was going on. They just kept telling me that I needed to relax, to not try to panic, don't worry, everything will be okay, blah, blah, blah. That was the farthest thing from the truth that they could have told me, but they were trying to help me because when you are nervous and anxious, your blood sugar goes up. So they didn't want to tell me anything at this point because they wanted me to stay calm and my sugar to go down and everything to be okay. They instantly gave me some, what's it called? IV with the liquids. I can't remember what it's called, but when you're dehydrated, they gave me some liquids, and they gave me insulin, and and also oddly enough, they gave me sugar. But that's because your brain does need carbs and sugar to function. And because I hadn't eaten anything, they're like, okay, you need some nutrient supplements, so we have to give you something. So they're slowly giving me drips of insulin. They gave me a lot, actually, and so I'm laying in the ER, and I'm starving at this point because my sugar had gone down. It was like 200, and when you're high for a long time, as soon as your sugar drops to, even if it's still high, 200 is still considered high. But because I was so high at 500, when it drops to 200, you feel low. And by low, it feels like you're like in the 50s range. So when you're low, you're shaky like this, you're sweating, you're hungry, you feel dizzy. So I felt that. And on top of that, hadn't eaten. So I felt horrible. I kept feeling like I was going to pass out. I'd been in the ER for about 3 hours at this point. Nobody's telling me anything. They wouldn't let me have any water, nothing to eat. I actually ended up, like, they gave me some ice chips, and I ate those like that because I was so thirsty. My mouth was so dry. I was severely dehydrated, which is why they were giving me the IV fluids. And so I asked them, I was like, at this point, point, I was getting really frustrated. I had been there since 6 in the morning. It was about 7 p.m. at this point. I was freaking out. I'm like, why is nobody telling me anything? What's going on? Do I have to stay here? My sugar's down. Why can't I go home? And I was literally about to rip out the IVs and leave. And they told me, if you leave right now, you are going to go home and die. And it kind of hit me at that point how serious this was. They didn't want to tell me anything at this point because, like I said before, they didn't want me freaking out and raising my blood sugar. But I just kind of sat there and I was like, what? And they're like, you're lucky you came when you did. If you would have slept more, you would have died in your sleep. You came at the perfect time. It could have gotten worse. If you go home now, you are going to die. And I just started bawling. I was screaming, I was crying, I was freaking out. My boyfriend wasn't there at this point. He had to go home. He had to go to work that day. And I told him, I was like, go, it's fine. I'm just going to be sitting here. Nothing's wrong. Like, they're making a big deal about it. So my mom and dad were in the room, and I just was crying. My dad's crying, my mom's crying, and I think everybody realized at this point how serious this was. And they finally gave me a word for what was going on, and they told me that I was in DKA, diabetes ketoacidosis, which it's very serious, it's very life-threatening, and it's a very scary thing to happen. But I just kind of shut up at that point. I didn't say anything. I was just kind of sitting there, like, freaking out internally. They gave me oxygen because I started having a really bad panic attack, which I'm actually on anxiety meds because I have such bad anxiety. And that's a whole nother story, but they had to give me oxygen. I just laid there. Finally, at about 11 or 12 at night, they finally brought me to a room, and they had told me that I had to go to the children's ICU unit because the regular ICU unit was so packed that day for some reason. They'd never seen it like that before, which is why they actually kept me in the ER for so long, because they didn't have any rooms available. So they put me in my own room. I didn't have a roommate or anything. I was in a little private room. It was actually a really nice room. It had its own bathroom. It had TV. It had a huge bed. Like, it was awesome. It wasn't like one of those hospital beds. It was a huge bed. It had a closet. It had a bunch of stuff in there, which I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but for a hospital room, it was pretty nice. And because it was the children's unit, it had a bunch of, like, cute decorations on the wall, and it just made me, like, feel better. And oddly enough, when I first got diagnosed with diabetes, I'm at the same hospital that I was, and I was in the same unit, and it was kind of like a flashback that, like, whoa, like, I was here, when I was 12 years old, and here I am, almost, 11 years later, and it was just crazy. So basically, long story short, I was in the ICU for 2 days, and they finally let me eat after the third day of being in the hospital. They gave me a very strict diet, and I had to count out all the carbs. And I saw so many doctors. I got poked so many times. I did so many tests. They had to check everything. They stuck needles in my feet to make sure I didn't have any nerve damage. They took blood more times than I can count. I think I got blood drawn like 15 to 20 times a day. It was just ridiculous. And I was just so exhausted at this point, and they finally transferred me to a regular room to just be transferred out. So I went to the regular room. They started telling me all this bullshit of, oh, we have to do more tests, we have to do this, we have to do that. And I finally was like, no more. I'm done. I need to leave. I have to go home. I can't take this anymore. I'm okay now. And I knew I was okay. I felt better. My sugar was down. I had no more ketones in my urine. They did a million tests. They said I was fine. And the thing that made me upset was I'd been seeing this one doctor the whole time, from the ER until the ICU. all of a sudden I go into this regular room, this whole new doctor comes in and is like, oh, I want to do tests, I need to do this. And I was like, no, listen, I know you're trying to do your job, I know you're trying to make me okay, but I'm okay, I need to go home. So I started refusing treatment. I told them I'm done, let's send me home. And I basically went home a few hours later. When I got home, I was very, very weak. I was very tired. I slept for like 2 days. But it was kind of a wake-up call. It was kind of nice in a way to have that, because before that, I didn't really care. I didn't think that anything would ever happen to me. I thought I was invincible. I thought that, oh, whatever, my sugars are high, I don't care. Like, nothing, whatever, I feel fine. But little did I know that internally it was hurting me. And luckily, it was no permanent damage. And I'm healthier than ever now because of this, because I had that wake-up call. And if I hadn't had that, who knows what would have happened. If I hadn't checked my ketones, if I hadn't thrown up, if I hadn't done all these steps, I probably would be here right now. And that's really scary to think about, but I'm just really, really, really glad that I listened to my body and that I knew something was wrong. And I think that's really important, that you need to listen to your body and you need to listen to the signs that it gives you, because you can't ignore things when your body's trying to tell you something, because they're there for a reason.